I'll call the meeting to order. Let's start with roll call.
Yeah, before we do that, Ken has an introduction.
I would like to introduce Nicole Halpin. She's our new water resources intern. We'll be here all this winter. And, just getting started. Lot to look at and learn, but she's really going to be here to help us with a lot of our special projects. So I wanted to introduce her to the board. And
Welcome.
thank you.
Alright. For the roll call, we have Tom Dessler,
Here.
Scott Holwick,
Here.
Roger Lang,
Here.
Renee Davis,
Here.
Dan Wolford,
Here.
Ken Houston,
Here.
Hope Bartlett, Alex Merkline,
Here.
Nicole Halflin, Joe Mahalski,
Here.
Chris Huffer,
Here.
Heather McIntyre is here. Slow brain today, it's Monday. And Diane, we have Diane Christ with us in the public.
Okay.
Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Let's look at approving previous month's minutes. Any questions or comments on the minutes from last month? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, approved. Oh, Kevin's not here today.
I will be giving the water status report in Kevin's absence.
Okay.
The flow on the St. Vrain at the Lions Gauge this morning at 8 a.m. was approximately 38 CFS with the 125-year historic average of approximately 60 CFS for this date. The call on the St. Vrain Creek was Oligarchy Ditch, admin number 5996, with a priority date of 6/1/1866. The call on the main stem of the South Platte River was Burlington D. River Headgate, admin number 13108, with a priority of 11/20/1885. Ralph Price Reservoir at Button Rock Preserve was at an elevation of 6,399.8 feet, or approximately 16,153 acre feet. Union Reservoir was at a gauge height of 24.04 feet, or 9,985 acre feet, down approximately 2,783 acre feet from full. And we're currently dropping Union Reservoir for some work on the Oligarchy Ditch Inlet. Select St. Vrain River Basin reservoirs at the end of August were at 71.8% full, which is a little lower than last year's 78.5% full. And I think it's good to know from the U.S. Drought Monitor's last update, portions of Boulder County are currently in a moderate drought, with a portion of the county being in a severe drought. And that is the update.
Question for Alex? Okay, thanks, Alex.
No problem.
Any public invited to be heard?
No.
Okay. Any revisions on the agenda?
I have none.
Okay. Like development activity is very busy this month. Okay. How about general business?
None?
Okay, Ken, you want to talk about cash in lieu?
I do. So this will be really our first cash in lieu that, since we kind of changed our policy to do a June recommendation and then a January setting for that. So we did take that June recommendation. We're scheduled it on City Council. It's actually scheduled for October 22nd, and I think we're ready to go forward with that recommendation. Recall that was at the 59,625 level. And of course, we don't have any new information on Windy Gap because there really hasn't been any Windy Gap sales or any activity going on there. So don't have much there's anything really new other than the fact that the Windy Gap firming project is still on track. And so that would be the only thing, no other Windy Gap parent project sales. One thing we did do though in this month's packet, in addition to including the data we do have on sales, if you do look at, on page 10 in your packet, those sales are actually starting to become a little bit surprisingly low, or lower than it has been in the past. Almost all of them in the $50,000 range now, well below the, kind of peaked out at about 75,000, and we believe it's actually coming back down. Now these are a little bit, the data's always a little bit older. This is April, May, and June data. So hopefully at the December board meeting, we'll have the summer data, July, August, and September. It always takes a little bit longer to get the actual data because most people don't say what they buy it for. And then our consultant, McCarty Land and Water, they then take that information from the Northern Board meeting of what water went where, and then they kind of hit the bush and try to. I'm actually surprised at how many people they actually get. They kind of admit to what they actually sold or bought it for. Usually people are kind of, they don't want to say. Although a lot of these, are public. Some of them are public agencies, so that's public information. But they actually are able to get a lot of information. And so that's what you have before you today. Not suggesting we do anything with this yet because, about 60,000, that's still higher than our recommended cash in lieu that we sent to council. But it is, like I say, it's trending down a little bit. If water board wanted, you could, ask us to, there's no magic to the date of October 22nd. We could wait until you looked at it again in December if you wanted us to. But if not.
What would be the rationale for that?
Only that I think prices are starting to trend down, and we would be able to see if that, I don't think it's gonna trend below what we recommended, for sure. That would have to go a lot lower
Good.
than what we recommended on the CBT,
Yeah,
not
right.
on other water rights. And of course, the windy gap, which is what we're using as our metric, isn't gonna go down because the contractor's not gonna give us any money back on the project.
Right.
And the parent project numbers are what they are. And we're not aware of any more sales of the parent project. PRPA said they're gonna wait 2 to 3 years before they release the last of their units for sale. So I don't see any more information there. So there isn't any reason that I would suggest that, but I just wanted to say, looking at the data, I just find it a little interesting that it's trending down. And, that's a little bit of a barometer of the economy, that the developers are getting a little more nervous about the economy, so they're not out beating the bush for water like we were.
Well, speaking of developers, based on what we decided and set the number at, and how we're gonna operate effective January, is that word getting out to them, or do they have a sense of what we're doing or what our plans are?
Yes, very much so. We've had real good success with our planning department. Every time somebody comes in that's a new developer or new to the community, they explain that to them. And we've had a number of developers call us and just kind of, okay, this is what I was told, is that right? And I say, yeah, that's right.
Probably not used to that.
Yeah, they're not used to having a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's so far been positive. I think everybody appreciates, they still know they got, well, now 3.5 months, but they still have a little bit of time and they can get their planning together. I would expect maybe a little bit of cash in to come in November, December time period.
Okay.
Before that. If council does go ahead and increase it in October, I would expect that we'd get a little bit then. Because there still is a little bit of interest out there. I mean, the good thing about the advanced lead time is it's got a lot of developers now. So I think it's been very positive.
Yeah.
And we haven't heard any pushback or any real big concern. Chris, if you've heard anything beyond what we haven't heard? Yeah, I think it's, and there's a lot of land out there, honestly, that's being developed right now that's already met the deficit.
Yeah.
There's a number of parcels, development parcels that have already met it. Ready, they're moving forward, so. Not a lot of excitement in my report today, but just, I did want to highlight that the CBT sales. I found it a little interesting. It dipped a little more than, and one sale even was, what was that?
$49.5.
One sale like $49.5, yeah. I don't know how,
These are-
I don't know how Lafayette did that unless it was something they had
Somebody
from
owed
way
something.
back. That surprised me when I saw that. But that's,
But,
10-year commitment of bushels of corn.
The units here though, that's, I mean, that's not an acre foot, right?
Correct.
That's 710.
so you divide it by 0.76.
76.
That, our credit is 0.76 acre feet per share. So you divide that number, so 60,000 is about 75,000 per acre foot.
And like, this is just to see where the overall kind of water market is going, because using these data, we haven't historically, or we haven't recently used these data in our consideration of setting the cash flow
Yeah,
price.
it's probably been 15 years since we
Yeah, that's basically.
used, it's been quite a while. Because when it, about 2012,
Yeah.
when it took off, it
Right.
took off so fast that it no longer made sense for us to be using that.
And then I had one more question. So every once in a while you do see investor.
I was gonna raise that same question.
Is that, so that, I thought you couldn't speculate or something on that.
I
on the
think it's
CBT
Kevin
share.
McCarty's characterization of the seller. So Kevin's a consultant, he has no affiliation with Northern. I suspect that he's getting an other category, as he calls it. But yeah, it raised my eyebrow substantially too. I'm wondering if Northern knows that they've got investors that are sellers. That would be news to them, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
really,
as long as they have a piece of land that they put it on, I guess they can be an investor on a,
Well, if they're using
The
it,
land,
sure.
I guess.
yeah. And honestly, Kevin's a
Appraiser.
land and appraiser, land agent, and he kind of knows, somebody can buy a piece of farm ground and move CBT onto it as long as it meets all the criteria. Kevin just knows really what they're doing.
Yeah.
Most of them, I will be honest, most of them are not investors in the term. Most of them are developers who are putting the water there so that they can then move it onto a development somewhere. Even that Northern doesn't allow unless it's a legitimate farm. But some of them are leaving it on the same farm, just putting it in their name, but leaving it on the farm until they move it off to a development. So that you can do.
That is.
Do we have a sense of how much how much of the northern shares are in the municipal bucket?
Yes, I have not heard that figure. It's around 3/4 of, about 75% of it is already in M&I. I would say it's more than that though, because of the number of people who have it on a farm, that, they own the farm.
So they own the farm.
A developer will buy a farm somewhere.
Oh, okay, so the
Yeah.
farm they're currently with farm but owned by a
It's
developer.
currently farmed, it's
Moving or gonna move.
It's gonna move.
Okay.
I would say it's tied up in M&I. It's probably closer to 85%, maybe even as high as 90. It's a significant part of it.
Yeah, that's one thing I've noticed when I'm looking at raw water requirements and things like that with other districts is for a while, it was bring a CBT or nothing at all, like, or a cash in lieu. It was set very high to CBT prices. And now it seems like there's kind of a little bit more variety. And I'm curious if there's been a change in the demand profile from utilities and municipals, that they've diversified what they'll accept. I've gotten that sense, but I'm not, I would love to know what you think about it.
Yeah, so two things really happening there. One is Northern was in kind of a catch-22. There were a couple rural domestic, you know, I don't mean to pick on anybody, say Little Thompson, that's all they
Mhm.
took.
Yeah.
And Northern was saying, you can't do that. But they never ever quite stopped it,
Mhm.
but
Okay.
they made them have a real good, told them you gotta have a plan to come up with other water supplies. Then, so some of them started doing that. Little Thompson now accepts Home Supply and one other Big Thompson water, right? And, but and they've done some, like, they've got some Windy Gap, Little Thompson has, and they're doing a raw water project out on the Barefoot Lakes subdivision with spent gravel pits. So they're starting that. But on top of that, most of the rural domestics are also participating in the NISP, Northern Integrated Supply Project. Again, a little bit of money there.
Yeah.
But by participating in that project, quite honestly, I would suspect some of the money they would have otherwise been out in the market looking for CBT water, for no other reason, they have no other choice. They're now putting into NISP.
Okay.
And NISP, is much further along than it was.
Speaking of NISP, do we have a dollar per acre foot sense on NISP?
We do, I can't tell you how.
Several billion dollars divided by 4,000 acre feet.
Yeah, I know it's not pretty.
No, it's still under 100,000 per acre foot yield expected, but that also anticipates that both phases of the project will ultimately get built. Because the
It's
first
still under
phase will deliver.
100,000? Okay,
Well, if you look at CBT, it's
Yeah,
about
it's-
100,000 an acre foot, if you look at an acre foot basis, so it's comparable.
I have it at 77, but yeah,
So if you had a $70,000 per unit at 0.7 yield, you're at 105. So,
Okay.
In
the
recent
it's
years, it's been
comparatory,
relatively
it's still
yeah,
relevant.
I'm thinking too, I included
Yeah.
February sales.
Sure, just generically, that's kind of the way that most of the NIST participants look at it, because
Okay.
they're most of them have a large inventory of CBT, and that's the way they tell their board members. It's still roughly a CBT kind of a project, but that definitely means that both phases have to get built at some point, because half the yield will be available at the end of the first phase, and the other half would only be available if they built the second phase.
Okay.
The other piece that a lot of the water districts that I'm familiar with, that they actually are looking to diversify their CBT portfolio, because
Yeah.
particularly what's going on in the Colorado River and the possibility that there's limited availability of CBT water in certain scenarios, planning scenarios in the future. So there's people making a conscious effort to buy more native water to offset that. Playing on for about 10, 15 years for some of them. Some are just coming to the table going, we should probably do something about this, but the options are fairly limited
Yeah,
for native water.
I've just wondered about the effects of that diversification on CBT prices. If people can go somewhere else and find something else that their district will accept, if that doesn't help relieve some of the pressure on CBT. One of the things I wanted to bring up is, at my job, I recently came up with a similar problem of what do we value, how do we value water rights? And we had a market rate study. It was pretty helpful, and it looked at sales all up and down the South Platte River. And one of the things I wanted to let you know is that as much as it was helpful, there weren't a ton of data points. And I'm bringing that up because I think where we've tied ourselves to the Windy Gap parent project rights valuation, I will admit I'm a little concerned that we're not going to see another sale for a while. But it would still be appropriate and good for us to have something to review this time next year if there's not a sale. And so I don't want to say that we should do a study because I just said there were limited data points. But there is some data out there that could maybe help us. I don't know that the prices are quite a match for what we're bringing in new. But one of the things that I did look at when I was looking at that study was trying to see if there were indexes that we could, use to inflate stuff, and so that the study doesn't have to be updated every year, because that's a lot of studies. So there's other approaches too that I think we should keep in mind moving forward, and other ways we can maybe get some data and or help the data keep up with inflation. So,
Yeah.
2
No,
cents.
Appreciate that, because that's kind of where we are right now, looking at some, new, at least looking at some other cities, looking at some of those other possibilities. 'Cause
Yeah.
again, even though we're not using CBT, and I think it's very valuable to keep our eye on the CBT market, as well as we can,
Other
we
water
can keep
rights
other rights
sales.
sales.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, we haven't reported it lately, but Highland water's a lot higher than it used to be, I'll put it that way.
Interesting.
It's very interesting how high share of the Highland ditch is gone.
Well,
But
when
it's very useful for people out east, so.
I was looking at the market valuation and then trying to compare it to an older data and then seeing what indexes basically matched, I found that the Denver Aurora Lakewood Housing Price Index was a horrifyingly good match to how water rights had inflated, which you can be like, well, they're water rights, they're a different thing, but to me, it really shows the tie of water rights and development.
To develop,
Yeah.
And we never write contracts based on CPI accelerators, it's not connected well, but construction indices are,
Yeah,
which would be not dissimilar to the housing market indice, I suspect.
it's
Usually
it's
has
not
some-
as the same as I would have liked, because I looked at Engineering News Record and a Fed construction index, and they weren't quite as tight. But to the point of, like, I think we should keep our eye on it so that we don't have a rate shock in 3 years when we adjust it. I would like to see slow and steady tracking of, and changes that reflect our best understanding of reality. Because I think we can advise city council away from freaking the developers out. And also, maintaining equity in the system so that the ratepayers aren't subsidizing development.
Cool.
Any other questions for Ken? So October 22nd, you said?
Yes, the second regular council meeting in,
That's where it's currently sitting.
Yeah.
yeah. that's where-
So Diane, you can spiffy up on cash and Lee, explain that to your partner. on the city council. Move it along.
Yeah, actually, it's helpful.
All right. Water resources engineering projects.
What do you get first?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Go ahead.
that's fine.
It's just not on our tab.
I thought we had talked about Windy Gap, but maybe not.
No, that was cash and loan.
Okay, Windy Gap.
Go.
You should be able to just click on it and it will go to the next one. Or scroll down with the roller.
Just do it this way. Okay, just a quick update on the Windy Gap project. Here's a recent photo just last Monday. Again, as we saw last month, we're now, we have a complete level top of the dam embankment at this point. Remember, there was a low point on the west side that got filled in, so still looking good. These are some of the updates that Northern Water gave us. Couple ones to point out. It was actually kind of neat this month, starting to talk about things getting done, different phases of the project, rather than everything just all so much done. The upstream, the outlet tunnel, as well as the outlet piping, should be completed by the end of this month. They're just doing some of the last concrete backfilling around that. So that's really good news, because the inlet and outlet tower can immediately start going up. And of course, that's what you gotta have go up before you can fill anything in the reservoir. But, so that major part, the valve house, call it the floor of the valve house, the valves and everything like that on the main valve house is complete, so they're starting to put the structural steel there to get the main valve in there, which they actually put a lot of the valves in, and then they'll build a building around the valves. You can get them in and out, but it's a lot less expensive to have the valves sitting there, build the building around the valves. They welded the last piece of the main conduit from the CBT project down. So that pipeline is complete, which is good. And then on the spillway, part of the spillway is in a box culvert, part of it's just an open channel, but part of it goes into a box culvert. The last two box culverts are being poured this week and next week, so the spillway will be completed at that point. And then the saddle dam is now out of the foundation stage. It's actually starting to raise it. As last week, it was 6 feet above ground with only 35 feet. It's a 40-foot tall dam, so that'll go pretty quick. So it's kind of neat to have actually be talking about this part of the project's done and that part of the project's done. Just out of interesting curiosity, it's 257 foot tall of the 350 feet. It now makes it the 8th tallest dam in Colorado already. So it just went above, taller than Granby, the dam at Granby. So that's pretty good. Then one of the things they just did start a couple of weeks ago is the tie-in to the Carter Lake pressure conduit. So there's a pressure conduit that goes from the Flatirons power plant, Flatirons power and pumping plant. It's got 3 units, and one of the 3 units in the Flatiron plant pumps water from Flatiron Reservoir up to Carter Lake. And you can see right here, this is where they basically cut out a section of it. Pretty good sized pipe. You can see the worker in there, so that's a real pipe. That's being done this fall. Very substantial penalty if they don't get it done by December 15th, because that's the only way we have to put water in Carter Lake. So right now, there's no way to put water in Carter Lake. Luckily, Carter Lake has 80,000 acre feet in it, so we're fine there, but gotta get this work done. But it was pretty interesting. They had a heck of a hard time getting that actually cut out. They had a really large demo saw as they were trying to saw it. And it's a steel pipe encased in extremely high strength steel bands, and then concrete poured around the steel bands to basically protect the pre-stressed steel bands. And their saw hit those steel post-tension bands, and it wore the saw blades out instead of cutting the bands. So they had a little bit of trouble getting it done, but they finally got through it. So that's actual conduit. The conduit goes up here, and then Carter Lake's on the other side of that hillside right there. So that's pretty interesting. This is the schedule. We're currently 68% complete on the project. Still tracking along pretty good. Earned to date of 431 million, so earned 76% to date. So good portion of the project done, and we're still tracking well. And that's what was left after they tried to get the pipe. They actually had to kind of mash the pipe down to finally break those bands. So that's our update. Going well. No big surprises at this point.
costs are basically on,
They are, yeah. We're revised contract amount of 565, and we're within, we still have about 25% of the contingency unallocated. So, we're doing well there.
Just switch it, pull
Whoops.
it back up and switch back to the other tab.
That's what I need to do. There we go, sorry.
That's all right.
There we go. So, yeah, that's our, we got update.
questions for Ken? Okay.
Oh, one, I would point out that I don't remember if, I think I mentioned this at the August meeting, they did get evacuated during the Alexander Mountain Fire. To give the contractor credit for workers, they worked right through the Labor Day weekend
Catch you.
to catch up. So they picked up 3 or 4 days right there of the, like 7 days they lost because of the fire, so. Credit them with the,
Yeah.
wanting to keep on track time-wise.
Okay. Thanks, Ken. Okay, engineering projects, water engineering projects.
Yep, so that one's mine. So I'm Joe Mahalski, Engineering and Operations Administrator. So I'm just gonna give verbal updates on 3 water resources projects. One's the North St. Vrain pipelining project. So there's about 1,600 feet of 24-inch steel pipe that we're lining in Lyons. It's basically 800 feet either side of Highway 36 where it comes into 66, kind of give you an idea of where it's at. Quite a few leaks on the existing steel pipeline, so that's why we're lining it, and we're pulling through a structural liner. Again, we just don't have to dig and replace and get all the necessary, the permits associated with that by doing the lining. So that's the path that we're moving forward with. We've actually been doing the work for 3 months now. We're coming close to completion. We have about 2 weeks left. We're going to be doing pressure testing this week and hopefully commissioning it and by the end of next week. So we've been without the North St. Vrain feed from Button Rock going into the treatment plant all summer. So it's going to be treatment ops guys I know are really looking forward to getting that pipeline back in service. So I don't know if there's any questions on that one, but hopefully in a couple weeks it'll be complete. Then the South St. Vrain pump station, so that's another project over in Lyons. So the purpose for that project, there's 3 pumps below grade by the fire station over in Lyons. And we're basically taking water from the South St. Vrain pipeline and pumping it into the North St. Vrain pipeline, the same one that we actually have down right now for the lining. Just gives us additional redundancy and resiliency, different options for how to operate the systems and get the raw water to the treatment facilities. We've had some issues with this project. It's probably been about a year that we've been working on some warranty items with the contractor. There was some water that got into some of the electrical gear, so we've been working on rebuilding that. And at the time, right before that, the water intrusion happened, there were some vibration issues with the pumps. So the manufacturer did install some additional bracing in the below grade pump station. So we're hoping to start that up after we get the North St. Vrain online. We need that pipeline lining project to get done first before we can fill it with some of this water. So that one's more on schedule for the end of October as far as trying to run that again. But hopefully, we'll have those 2 projects tied up end of October. And then the last big one I was going to report on is just Price Park tank. So we did fill it. There was some debris in the tank, so we had the contractor take it back down to clean it better and disinfect again. The tank manufacturer also had to do some minor repair work. There was some wire ties for rebar and stuff that were showing, so they had to drill those out and grout them just so that we didn't have rusting inside the tank. So we're working on that with the manufacturer right now. We're hoping to have an inspection by city staff and the contractor by the end of this week, and then we'll be cleaning it again, disinfecting it again, and putting the tank into service. That's about a 2-week process by the time you fill it and everything. So we're really looking at end of the month, maybe having the tank in service if all goes well. And then there is a pump station associated with the tank. so that we'll be able to pump from different pressure zones. And again, that's just another good redundancy piece for us to be able to move some water around in the distribution system from that site. That pump station, we want to operate the tank for a couple weeks before we start the pumps up. So that's looking like more like middle of October for the pump station startup at this point. But that's kind of the update on those 3 projects.
That pump station is is on site.
Yep, so it's below grade. Again, once we get all this working, we will be doing some tours and everything, so I can definitely arrange something with Waterboard to walk you guys around the site so you can kind of see where we're at and everything. But right now, there's just contractors and everything on site, so it's not ideal for having people for giving tours and everything until we kind of have at least the tank in operation. So. But the projects have been coming in on budget. The Price Park tank is a $20 million project, and so far as change orders have been minor, $200,000 at this point. So that's pretty good for a project that size, especially during the time frame that the project was going on. During that 2021 to 2023 period was the bulk of the work, and we luckily we were able to bid that one right before a lot of the cost escalation and everything. But contractor hasn't been hitting us up too hard as far as some change orders and everything. But it's been going well, other than it's been taking some time now to really get it in operation, but we're taking our time to make sure it's cleaned and disinfected properly. So
What's the capacity of that tank?
8 million gallon tank.
Big pool.
Yeah.
So the size, did you say 8 million?
Yes.
And what was there before?
So there was a 7 million gallon tank and a 2 million gallon tank. They were covered, they weren't circular. So we had 9 million gallons out there, but for the most part, really the only 7 million gallon tank was in operation, and it was difficult to operate. And the main purpose for the project was we were getting some regulatory comments on inspections and everything as far as how old those existing tanks were. So that was the main impetus for the project. So. Takes a while to get these done. It's been 6 years in the
Big
making,
project.
from design through us getting to this point. So hoping to bring it across the finish line here real soon.
Questions for Joe? Well, yeah, it'd be nice when you wrap it up, you give us a tour.
Yeah, for sure.
So, great, all right, well, thanks. Okay, review of water board bylaws.
Yes, we have a copy of the bylaws, pretty standard once a year. We have let water board take a look at it. And, if you have any changes, if not, we'll keep them as is.
Any comments on the bylaws from anybody?
I guess I have a quick thing. Yeah, bylaws look fine, good, pretty standard and what I remember seeing from other years, I suppose. So I guess I do have a question about, I don't know if this is the appropriate time to talk about it or not, but like whether, and I don't know whether this would get enshrined in the bylaws or not, but at some point we were going to swing back around to chatting about like whether water board would take positions on kind of resolutions and things that come before city council, or so in other words, so what, two months ago there was a individual here, and I'm sorry I forget names and everything, but that was asking about whether water board was going to kind of like support a particular what was it about?
Sales tax.
Yeah, sales tax,
Space.
okay, for open space, okay, there you go. So, thank you all, because I completely blanked on that, so, but I did remember that kind of like general discussion about whether or not like whether it's in water board's place essentially to kind of take positions on those types of proposals, I guess. Like I said, I don't know that it gets enshrined in the bylaws necessarily, as like one of the things that the water board does or does not do, I guess. But I just thought, if we didn't talk about it today, I was just going to kind of put it on again on our radar screen.
One comment, if depending on what we would like to do or not like to do, this thing went through several boards, not just the water board. I mean, consistency throughout the different boards, I think that'd be part of the discussion if in fact we're gonna do something.
Yeah.
So, you know, I hear what you're saying, but I don't know.
It'd be
We would be-
weird if other boards could recommend something and water board is prohibited by our own bylaws from doing
Real
so.
weird. Well, we
Weird.
just couldn't do that.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, we gotta be consistent, yeah. So,
that's a good point.
We would be happy to check with the city clerk's office, kind of see if there's a standard.
yeah, why don't you do that? Then
At least
you could get a
do
look.
some not, you know.
Yeah,
We'd be happy to
yeah,
get a little information about that.
okay.
We'll check with the city clerk's office.
Anything else, Tom?
No, like I said, I didn't know if this was the moment to talk about it or not, but I just thought I'd throw it back out there.
No, that's great.
All I'm saying is bigger than just us, so it wouldn't hurt to have a little sense of the rest of the group, so.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, the bylaws really don't prescribe what our powers and limitations are. They tell us how we operate. It's the, charter and the code that give us what we're allowed to do and not allowed to do. And similarly for other entities within the city,
Yeah.
the charter and the code would be the definitive source. So I didn't go back and look, that's a great question, honestly, but somebody could certainly look to see if there's consistency within that
Or not.
for the different, yeah.
Because at this point, we've been operating as though, I believe I think what we did a couple months back, right, was kind of split the difference in a sense of like, say that, yeah, we're kind of like recommending to council, but not necessarily that we're like, don't maybe put our names on a billboard somewhere that we support the proposal or something. But that council should recommend it should go to council at least. But we've been operating, doing whatever we've been doing for the last however long, without knowing, right, whether there's something in the charter that says we should or should not, right?
Yeah, if you can check that out.
Yeah, we'll check.
And give us some.
Give you a report on that.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a good, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
anything else? I want to vote on reviewing the board, the bylaws. as a
Well, if the
council.
recommendation from staff is that we approve the bylaws as the amendments to the bylaws as proposed, then I would make that motion.
Second?
Be happy to second
Okay. Any comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
it. Aye.
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 All right. Okay, major projects listing and items scheduled for future board meetings. Can you put that up?
Yep.
And one thing I would like to point out on that is the Northern's Fall Water User Meeting, I think called the Fall Symposium now, is the 30th of October. But it's now open if anybody wants to sign up, or we'd be happy to sign you up if you want us to. But you can go right on their website and sign up. If you want to go to that, they suggest you do it pretty quick because it fills up
Fills
pretty
up.
quick anymore.
Yeah.
But just wanted to note that.
Yeah, Heather's been on that.
Wes was on it.
Okay. So, looking at the schedule there and the dates, actually, there's only one thing nearest to us, Union Reservoir Programs update on November. So, any comments on what's tentatively scheduled up there by anybody?
Or are there other items you'd like us to, bring before we go? We'd be happy to research that too.
I would say that I would actually welcome a rates update,
I'm sorry.
water rates update.
Water rates.
I
Yes.
don't know if the timing on that is gonna work, but I know it's kind of a thing, and it's nice to know what's going on, so when people ask me about it, I can help talk about it.
I agree with that. I hate to read about it in the paper and not knowing anything until I read the paper, so.
I get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's our payment, we get to know just a little before the paper.
If we're doing anything at all, yeah, we ought to beat the paper, but I got a comment on that after we decide what we want to do with this, but it's a good idea. Any other comments on what's ahead for us?
Ken, would be appropriate to share with the board some of the storage discussions, some of the things that, like, the PL 566, just more of an overview?
Yeah,
Entire board,
we'd be
what
happy
we're
to do an
looking at.
overview, or be happy to invite Sean Cronin from the district to give us an update. I'm sure they'd be happy to do that. We can do either, but yeah, no, that's certainly, let me make a note of that.
Can you describe that one a little bit more? What would this be?
Well, I think there's the cities, I'm trying to,
Yeah.
that fine line of being, Water Resources Advisory Board member as well as, St. Vrain left-hand board member, and knowing that there's a lot of discussion with the city about water projects, future projects, and in collaboration and trying to get federal grants to do some of these things, whether it makes sense, especially to keep this board at least to be informed on what the city's looking at, how it can participate, where that money's, what significant chunk of change could potentially be coming down the pipe from the feds to do some of these things.
Yeah.
Sean was here about a year ago.
Is that
probably.
the one that's scheduled for January down here?
I think it's different than that,
Oh,
Heather. I'll put
Yeah.
my other hat on as well. The stream management plan was adopted. There is a update on next steps for the stream management plan in terms of adopting guiding principles and so forth and putting them into action. That has a city overlay for sure. The PL 566 funding that Dan spoke of is a federal pot of dollars. The district, on behalf of a lot of stakeholders within the basin here, applied for roughly $250 million of funds for what were considered somewhat shovel-ready projects.
Mhm.
And some of those have a nexus with the city, others have a nexus with ditch companies, some have a nexus with multiple agency parties. So that's probably something that you could ask Sean if there's a good opportunity to provide an update. The long and the short of it is there's 2 phases moving forward. One is a first phase which has about 10 projects that has gone through the first phase of funding and approval, and that was done, and then we're waiting for the NRCS federal through the state to provide dollars for what's the second phase, which is an EA phase for all 10 of those projects. And that has not happened in this fiscal year, so we're waiting for the October, beginning of the next federal fiscal year to see what dollars are allocable. For what it's worth, the NRCS is prioritizing funding that has been appropriated for construction projects. So if all the money gets eaten up in construction, there's nothing left for EA, because that's the second phase. And there's nothing left for the other ones. So the other projects that weren't in those first 10 are all lumped into a second phase. They're somewhat geographic in scope, Tom. And those are in the middle of the first phase and are limping towards approval, so they would get into the bucket for EA funding for second phase probably in 2025 also.
I remember that
Okay.
from like something
Yeah,
about a year
Sean
ago.
did.
Sean did
And it-
provide it, yeah.
And it was one of my favorite actually discussions because it was very future focused and like kind of the way that they were arranging things was quite nice. And so, yeah, I would welcome that discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a good
basically the
one.
point.
It may be something that can be combined with the stream management plan, but my guess is Sean's gonna wanna do those separately. because they're distinct, for sure.
You know, we'll put that down actually as one of the ongoing, something we can update once a year or something.
I will tell you what the jeopardy is for being updated. We get updated every month.
Yeah.
Every month, it's like, this is what we think is gonna happen in the next 30 days, and every month they come back and say, that didn't happen. So it's probably where you're supposed to.
Same news.
Visually is good.
Does the 6 month or the year annual
Yeah, so
updates?
annually, might work.
It's kind of like going to a NIST board meeting and you're like, yeah, we're gonna get the record of decision any minute now, and 5 years later, it's a little anticlimactic. So,
Did you get your question answered, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. Thank you.
So, we'll accept this as listed.
You know, I was thinking on the October meeting, since there's nothing that's scheduled of specific substance, maybe we get to go on the tour.
Maybe what?
We get to go on the tour of the water tank completion project. Who
Would that
knows?
work?
In October?
It might,
Third Monday of October?
it might. We'll see what's going on with the pump station.
Yeah, no, I just,
Hopefully the tank is,
but it seems like it might almost,
Yeah.
time-wise,
It might.
from what you said, Joe.
so we
Depending
can
on,
keep
you
in
let
touch.
us know.
Mhm.
Go down there, yeah, good.
I'm going down there in winter time.
You know,
Yeah.
let me just throw something, this might not be completely related to what we're up to, but as far as water rates, they're proposing an increase in water rates. And the way I read it, somebody can help me with this, but I thought it was talking about costs, increase in costs of upgrading the treatment plant. It's impacting the water rates. Is that correct, or does that make any sense at all?
So there's, the expansion for Nelson Flanders was originally slated for a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
but the cost escalation, during the design kind of pushed it from the original budget was a little bit under 50 million.
Yeah.
And it was coming in closer to 90 million by the time it was all said and done. So we had to delay that piece. We're doing some smaller redundancy projects right now on the existing facility to kind of get us to that point. So that is a big piece of the capital costs. So it's also the distribution system also weighs into that as far as us replacing and expediting our replacement of cast iron pipes in the distribution system. We have 40 miles, I think, of cast iron, if memory serves me. And we were replacing it at like 1 mile a year. So again, 40 years, and a lot of that's already 75 to 80 years old. So we're trying to increase the frequency of that replacement to more like 3-4 miles per year. So again, increasing costs there. So those were two big factors from a capital perspective. There also were, just taking the capital projects out of it, operating expenses increasing over the next, time period versus what revenues we were taking in. So it's catching up on that side too.
I guess my point is, if rates are gonna go up, we're definitely going to increase the capacity of the treatment plant then. Is that a given, or is that something we don't know yet?
That's what's slated right now with the costs that we have and everything, yes. That I think it's in 2029 is when we have that in the 5-year CIP plan for that expansion at Nelson Flanders.
Okay. My only point is, if you wanna raise the rates, or if we wanna raise the rates, I would hope we would go ahead with that, given where the money's gonna hopefully be available, so, okay.
Roger, can I ask a
Yeah.
ancillary to what you said, Joe? Is the replacement of the cast iron pipe project the driver of the monstrosity that is the east side of Roosevelt Park along Kaufman there? Is that part of that project, or is that something completely different?
Those are the transit.
You mean,
Was that
work on
Those are at the
Kinbar
transit.
Street?
No, on Kaufman.
I'm Kaufman.
Well, it's underground,
So-
so it's pipe related because there's a lot of big.
So we're not in there right now. We were there last year. So we were out in front of the work that's being done right now as far as the paving. So we did upgrade the piping that was underneath there
That's what's
last
on it.
year. So, and that was part, yeah, cast iron and old pipe and getting out in front of the current
I
project.
assume most of your cast iron is in Old Town, right?
Yes.
Longevity wise.
What's the cast iron being replaced with?
PVC. Industry standard,
Water safe PVC.
C900, AWWA approved.
Okay, so are we done with major projects? I guess we'll wait to see as part of the tour. You know, I've got you lined
We'll
up.
probably, yeah, for end of October, so I know I'll check in with you at the end of this month as
Yeah.
far as that. The Rotary.
I asked him to put on a program for Rotary, to talk about what's been going on, so,
Yeah. I think they would enjoy that.
yeah. All right. Okay, anything else on this? Informational items and water board correspondence.
That was included in the packet.
Any questions on that? Okay. Okay. As far as cash in lieu, not much to say about cash in lieu, is there?
Not this.
Haven't we covered it?
No, we already covered it. It's just giving you the next time for review is in December.
All right. In future water board agendas, I think we pretty much covered that, unless there's more comments about that. Hope you haven't said anything yet.
No updates.
Just listening today. Anything else? Well, there's nothing else. Let's adjourn.
All right.
Right.
All right.
I know.